So thank you, everybody. It's been, I think, a hugely inspiring day to see multiple sessions come off, lots of different organizations join us who may not have spoken to each other, may not have bridged a divide before, have had the opportunity to connect on different topics that they wouldn't have done previously. So I think from that perspective, a big thank you to every organization that's played a key role in making today possible, and to all of you. Well done to also surviving to the last Friday afternoon slot of London Climate Week. I know many people have had hugely busy weeks. I can only speak for myself, but it's both inspiring and exhausting at the same time. And I haven't traveled very far. So we have the most extraordinary closing plenary as well, where this is an opportunity to really wrap up the week. But if you remember from earlier, it's also an opportunity for us to digest some of the messages that you were coming forward with that have resonated with you during the week and today. And we're going to be putting them to our illustrious panel. And there will be time then for you to ask questions from the floor or present a kind of an interesting, provocative remark. So be ready for those. But it is with great pleasure that I'd love to invite the panel to the stage. So, Ambassador Andre Correa do Lago, apologies for the pronunciation, Ambassador and President-Designate for COP30. And to Ruth Davis, OBE, UK Special Representative for Nature from the UK Government. Sheela Patel, Founder and Director of SPARC and Global Ambassador for the Climate High-Level Champions. And Linda Freiner, Chief Sustainability Officer for Zurich Insurance Group. You're very welcome.
One more chair. There's one more chair.
So, very good. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to ask the panel a question, and then we're going to flash up the kind of the messages that we've had from during the week and during the day, and then I'm going to ask the panel to respond to them, kind of what resonates to them, what doesn't, and what would they add. But maybe I could start with a kind of a question to each of you. And the question is, we've had this summit that has been about bringing together a whole ecosystem of organizations that have maybe not previously connected on climate resilience finance, who we know we need everybody together in the room. And that's been really one of the efforts today to think about how we supercharge that finance for climate resilience, knowing quite how critical the topic is and knowing how little of the resource is getting to the places that matter most. And this closing plenary is also about looking forward, and I think we've got fabulous people here who give us an opportunity to look forward. We've got FFD next week, the UN Finance for Development conference in Seville next week, and obviously we've got the road to Belem, but there's many other opportunities to meet. So you've all got that unique perspective, but what would be the thing that you would say to this audience here, this ecosystem, that we should take out of this week, out of today, and carry forward into those events? What resonates most with you, Ambassador?
No, I think that this week has shown that the interest for fighting climate change is very much alive, and maybe that we have to make some adjustments to bring on board more actors. But the fact is that we already have a very strong force, positive force to fight climate change. But there is also the competing themes that I think should not be considered competing themes, because you cannot have either something and climate. No, climate is there, you have to do it anyway. So I think that we have to somehow try to pass a message that the hierarchy of climate is different than crises that are closer to us. I understand psychologically it's obvious when we have a problem in the family, when we have a problem in the house, when we have a problem in school or whatever, everything changes hierarchy. But I think that we have to establish a little better the perception that climate has to be taken into consideration every day, all the time, in all sectors.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ruth?
If I could just build on the ambassador's points, and specifically around resilience, I think the concept of resilience is something that has gained a lot of depth over time. I'm not sure I fully understood what the concept was initially, but I feel like it is doing the job that the ambassador is talking about, which is bringing the reality of impacts on people very close to the center of the conversation, and then allowing us to think about how we build economies and concepts of development that entirely integrate both the idea of mitigation and adaptation responses into that. And we've spent a lot of time thinking about how we mainstream, but actually resilience is the engine for a really kind of like supercharged proper mainstreaming, which means that we don't treat climate as if it's something over there. We treated it as if it's literally the stuff of our lives. So I think that's been a great message. And the other piece, which I would say, of course, but I think is absolutely critical, is that the communities who work on the ground with impacted peoples on the ground and who think about resilience are the communities who think about nature first, because they recognize that nature is the first kind of wall of defense for them in dealing with the impacts of climate change. So those are the two things for me of a story of integration and immediacy, and then putting nature right at the center of that.
Thank you, Ruth. Sheela?
I come here on behalf of people who live informally all over the world. We are told that it's about 20% of the world's population today, and I believe that this will double with the crisis that we are going to face. The number of people who are going to be refugees from wars and from climate crisis, and none of us sitting here actually know what to do with them. And it is a tragedy of the whole development paradigm that we don't know how to provide them basic amenities, we don't know how to provide them services, financing institutions don't know what to do with them, research institutions like to do studies on them, but that impact doesn't clearly show on the volumes of people that are there. And we basically left them to their own resilience strategies, which are really very flimsy. So I'm very deeply concerned that the fact that this is already an urban planet, that it is going to get more urban. We're not talking about urban versus rural, but we are saying that transition is going to escalate. And I'm concerned that we are not working on those issues.
Thank you, Sheela. Linda?
For me, the highlight has really been that for the first time in these climate dialogues, are we addressing adaptation and mitigation together? In the past, it's been too much of an either or, when in fact, we need to address them together and ensure that resilience is really embedded and underpins everything that happens in the transition. Of course, as an insurance company, our industry is deeply rooted in climate analytics and modeling capabilities, and we've been assessing physical climate risk for Zurich for over 150 years, and then pricing them. And we thought that we had been sending pricing signals, but probably we weren't loud enough for the world to really listen. And I feel that this week the world is listening and hearing what we have to say. And as an industry, we are really moving from thinking about replacing and repairing to prevent and predict. And this is really what we also need to do as a world. So I'm really hopeful in terms of following these dialogues, and now that we need to continue this dialogue in the run-up up to COP and combining these two elements, because we need to embed resilience in every decision that we make.
Thank you so much. I wonder whether we could just flip to the messages. Brilliant. So we have tried to share these with some of the panelists, but equally, maybe not everybody's had a chance to see. So let me just very briefly...
The panelists have to guess.
Yes. So blended finance is a key, underutilized modality to increase finance for resilience, but isn't a silver bullet. We need to take holistic approaches to development and climate and adaptation and mitigation. It's already come up. Silos aren't getting us to where we need to be. We need to bridge divides in language and approaches between public and private and local and global, ensure no one is left behind. We need to move fast, but with care, The challenge is urgent. We have the tools, systems, and approaches to scale resilience finance, but we need to be context aware to ensure we can have sustainable impact. The quality of finance is just as important as the quality. Diversity and inclusion are critical. We can't make good decisions on adaptation and resilience investments without all stakeholders having a voice and a vote. Oh, well done us, right? That's a good set of messages. And I know you've, as a panel, you've had literally maybe no minutes in your case, but some very short minutes to consider what resonates with you. But maybe the question is, what resonates with you there, but also what do you think's missing? Linda, maybe I'll come back down this way if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. Put me on the spot. I think I have maybe 1 minute, so 1 minute more than the ambassador. Thank you for that. Look, I think most of this really resonates with me, and it's also what I've heard during the week. I think what is missing is really this connectivity. That we're missing connectivity across the financial system, businesses, down to governments. And the good news is this is not complicated, actually. Money is not a problem. The money is there. And as an insurance company, I dare to say that the data is actually there. We launched a study earlier this week looking at how we can better safeguard the energy infrastructure system of Europe. And during 3 months, we only used publicly available data, and we were able to assess 25,000 power sites. So data is there. But we need to be smart about how we bring this together. So that's an important piece. There's also connectivity missing between public policy and private capital. And I think that's a bit also back to the blended finance point of view. This is we're far from able to scale that. And then last but not least, we also need to connect now transition planning and resilience. And this goes for both business. What I've heard during the week is that business is now no longer thinking that resilience adaptations is up to governments. Businesses are trying to understand, okay, so how can we integrate resilience into our plans? And similarly, so what I think we need to do is really to make sure that we integrate resilience into both national and corporate transition plans. We do not need national adaptation plans or corporate adaptation plans. They should be one of the same.
Thank you. Very good. Sheela.
Although I sounded very gloomy and
Yes.
sad, I cannot tell you the power of aspirations and energy that communities have, not only for themselves, but for their children. And I have a lot of expectations of COP30 and you, sir, because Brazil has been a very important symbol of transformation of informal settlements and their participation in political and organizational aspects of their lives. And for all of us who do social movements around the world, they have been an inspiration. So what we hope is that this year, leading to COP, and also next year, that we develop ways by which we get all the people who need to be in a discussion on the issues of informality together to find solutions. It's not something that happens that you voluntarily walk into a room and they're talking about slums, but it's like saying, who are all the people who need to be in the room to talk about the transformation of cities? Because for me, the issue of social justice and equity in the COP process is as important as all the other negotiations that we do. So big demands and expectations.
Thank you, Sheela. Ruth.
Yeah, I think one of the things that resonates for me is people attempting to try to have the conversation that bridges the gap between what we might be doing with public finance and what we might be doing with private finance, and trying to find language that doesn't create a kind of vast ideological chasm between these two things. And I've had lots of conversations with people where there's a recognition that there might be models of private sector financing which do not place unacceptable debt burdens on people who are already struggling, but for example, could involve the participation of communities in solutions that they generate themselves that deliver benefits and results for all of us, and that are therefore rewarded through forms of payments in the private sector that are actually empowering as opposed to disempowering, and that really does provide agency. But that obviously in itself requires some, kind of really sustained effort to try to work from a situation in which private capital is available, at the scale of the hundreds of millions of the billions, and people need to be able to access that capital directly and quickly in relatively small amounts. Now, we all know that that is a problem of development, but is doubly a problem of resilience. So perhaps we can kind of, get at that a little bit more going forward.
Yeah, it's very critical. Ambassador.
So many things to say about that. But first of all, I think they're all quite interesting comments, and I think they cover quite well. But I want to say that it made me think of that word that we have proposed in the discussions in that mobilization period of COP30, which are these months before COP30, which is the key word, which is multidão. No? And multidão, for those, I think that everybody already knows about it because it's been repeated infinitely, but basically is when people get together, they do what they know how to do and what they do well towards a common objective to solve a specific problem. So we launched this idea of the multidão, which is an indigenous language from Brazil. It comes from an indigenous language. And the multidão is very strong in informal communities in Brazil because they are parts of the society that are very reluctant to believe in the state and very reluctant to believe also in the private sector. And so they find original, cheap, smart solutions, and some amazing solutions come from these bottom-up initiatives. And I think that it's interesting when they say, they mentions the different languages. I really have a feeling that sometimes you see that the different parts of the society are speaking different languages. And we notice that very strongly in the G20 when we try to talk about climate with the finance people, and the finance people try to talk about finance to the climate people. And unfortunately, they did not reach an agreement. But we have to keep trying, and I think that we definitely have to learn from each other, but we have to do it very fast. I think that this is one of the problems, is that when you create too many rules, for instance, you create so many rules that everything that the state does is very expensive. You create so many rules to have an infrastructure that this infrastructure costs 3 times more than it needs to cost because it's full of rules. And I think that resilience is a word that is very welcome and translates very well this at the same time that people are surviving, and at the same time that the people have to survive the new challenges. By the way, when the word resilience appeared, it was exasperating for Brazilian delegates because it sounds exactly like Brazilians. So you are a bit sleepy in an international meeting, and then someone says resilience, and then the Brazilian delegate wakes up and says that they're talking about us. No, it was not. But anyway, so this word was very absorbed, very easily absorbed by Brazil. But anyway.
Very good. Very good. So about 6 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to be part of a conference in Recife called the Community-Based Adaptation Conference. And so for those of you who may not know this type of conference, it invites practitioners, people that Sheila's been working with and talking to an awful lot from around the world, from 70 countries came to Recife. And they had the experience of thinking about what the COP could do for them. But for those of you who kind of know some of this story, we also had one of those opportunities for 400 people at this conference to experience one of the most almighty deluges in Recife, so much that we had to cancel part of the conference. People had to stay in their hotels under the guidance. And we actually took all of the conference goers before that out to communities to look at the schemes in the slums and so on. And then those communities were almost immediately displaced that very night. And so we'd had this most incredible experience, and some of the floodwaters, the deepest that I've ever seen. But what it did bring forward was this sense of a lived experience for the conference goers, but it brought to life some of the sense of what is going. So at the end of the conference, we had a member of your team, Ambassador, come and sit on the stage with me here, just like we're talking, and we opened the floor to the participants. And we said, ask anything, say anything. And what was amazing is that the conference then went on for an extra hour. Everybody stayed talking about their experiences. I think it was, buoyed by this kind of emotional sense of being part of that challenge. So I'm not sure we're going to get quite the same today, but we are going to open the floor. And I think what I would encourage you to do is ask a question if you want to ask a question, but also you're very welcome to make a comment about what this experience of this week has meant for you, and specifically what should we be taking forward into Belem, into FFD in Seville next week, but most importantly, into what we do next in all of our jobs, in all of our opportunities to bridge the boundaries we've been talking about. So the floor is open, and we will not necessarily come back to the panel after one question or so on. So feel free, open to have a very kind of quick, rapid debate. Please no big grandstanding. I will stop you if you're going on too long. Quick comments. We do need to finish on time, but I would love to hear from you to contribute to the discussion. Sinead, let's start with you. If you could introduce yourself quickly as well, that would be brilliant.
Thanks a million, Tom, and to the panelists, Sinead Walsh, Climate Envoy for Ireland. Ambassador, a question for you. I know Bonn is just over, so you may not have had a chance to digest it yet, but I suppose the question is, it's a tough financing context. Yeah. Some of us are going to Seville this evening, in fact. So in that context, what can be achieved on adaptation finance at COP? And I suppose, not so much a comment, Tom, as a sort of an offer. I mean, how can, countries like Ireland that mostly focus on adaptation finance, how can we help you to achieve something tangible in this pretty difficult financing context? Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sinead. Dina, should we go to Dina?
Thank you so much, Dina Said, and I want to say, first of all, congratulations to everyone, all the organizers, for an incredibly energizing Friday at the end of an exhausting week. And this is not intended to be critical, but I will start with an observation that not one panel that I attended today touched upon the fact that we're in a moment of democratic backsliding and rising populism.
We're in the moment of?
Democratic backsliding and rising populism. And I think this is a general observation about the whole week, in fact, not just today, that despite the fact that we are in a moment in history where more people live in countries that are characterized by repression and autocracy, that the fact that now liberal democratic order is an anomaly in this moment in history. And I guess the question is primarily for you, Ambassador, but for everyone really. What can we be doing as a climate community to revive this idea of democracy? We're having this point here saying that inclusion is necessary and that we can't really be talking about climate change and especially resilience and adaptation without understanding that people need to have a voice. But when the infrastructure, the democratic infrastructure is lacking in much of the world, what can COP30 mean for reviving this different narrative in a moment of rising populism?
Thank you, Dina. Does somebody else want to come in? Yes, gentleman here.
Hi, I'm Inam. I'm from Oxfam International. I'm from Bangladesh. Thank you for opening that up. I'm going to ask a tougher question. Why should the countries like Bangladesh and others consider continuing to participate in the COP process, given that this is COP30, this is not COP1, given the experiences that we had already? And why shouldn't we focus our energy on surviving the next genocide that's coming up, rather? Because every decision is now being forced upon us with like tariff wars, nuclear powers, showing your might, like whoever has that. Like in this global order, does it make sense to go forward with these processes anymore?
Thank you. Any more points before we turn back to the panel? Yes, just right here.
Thank you. My name is Katya. I work for C40 Cities. I am early in my career, unlike many of the people in this audience and on the panel who have very established backgrounds. One of the messages that I've heard come through all day is the importance of working outside of silos. And so I ask, as an early career professional, what is it that we can do as individuals, but also as organizations, to collaborate better together? What are the questions that we should be asking ourselves? What are the skills that we should be developing to work better together to solve these problems? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come in before we turn back to the panel?
These are enough questions.
You've got enough. You've got enough.
If you have more, you can choose your favorites.
Yeah, exactly. This wasn't a sense that you needed to respond to everything. Don't worry. Well, why don't you each just kind of choose something that doesn't necessarily need to be a direct response, but it's something that kind of resonates with you to you know, Ambassador, of course, a lot directed, but a lot of expectation on COP30.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get that everywhere you
No,
go.
they all resonate, in
Yeah.
fact, very much. One thing, for instance, regarding what the Irish dimension and the Bangladesh dimension. No, these negotiations, since the very first moment, are based on the division between developed and developing countries. But so this has been an element that has, at the same time, complicated the negotiations, but that have stressed very clearly the big principle. So the big principle is that there are some countries that are more responsible than others for climate change, and there are some countries that are suffering the worst consequences and are the least responsive for climate change. So it's the case of Bangladesh that may have a significant part of its territory being disappeared. Now, I'm going to concentrate, obviously, on some hope regarding COP. Is that I agree that we have been very poor at communicating what are the consequences of the COP, but after so many COPs. But the fact is that the discussion about climate change have not only stimulated science, but have stimulated technology and have stimulated data, have stimulated the knowledge that countries have of their own problems, and have stimulated communities to find solutions. So I think that we have to look at it as a process that have increased the understanding of the problem. It has not solved the problem because as we discussed more climate, we noticed that it was impacting more and more the economy, impacting more and more very established interests, and it was very difficult to advance in the political negotiations. Now, I think that the best reaction to that will be to everybody, a bit in the Mutirão spirit, everybody to do what they can do based on what they have learned, thanks to science, technology, etc., that the COPs have provoked. So I think that we have to decouple implementation, doing what we have to do, from the negotiation. We already had enough negotiations. We have enough decisions of the countries to do X, Y, Z. Let's do it, because there is already a mandate for that. And regarding the democratic issue, yes, the news are not particularly positive in that side. But at least at COP30, you're going to have a COP in a country that, fortunately, has strong again in its democracy, is extremely diverse, and and will participate in the effort that we can never forget, is that we also have to prove that democracies will overcome the crisis, the climate crisis, better than through other means. So I think that the climate crisis is obliging us to reinvent the economy, to reinvent many things, behavior, reinvent so many things. But I hope that it also helps to prove that the democratic system is the best one to deal with the challenges of climate change.
Thank you.
Yeah, there were 2 or 3 quite difficult questions there, and you know people in the audience have the right and in fact the obligation to make us feel uncomfortable by asking those questions.
Don't need to exaggerate.
Yeah. I'm so glad I'm not running a COP. I'm sorry, poor ambassador. We've done it. We've done it before, and now
solidarity
I'm
is welcome.
From the other end. It's okay. You've done your bit. I'm gonna. I really, obviously, I agree very much with what the ambassador said. But can I add something from the perspective of somebody who has spent many years in civil society attending COPs, and you know, I'm sitting here working for a government at the moment, but you know, probably one of the most formative experiences of my life was sitting in the ruins, really, of the Copenhagen conference, and I was just sort of beside myself, really. I didn't know what had happened, and I was quite a young person, and I can remember saying to a colleague of mine, why would I ever come back here again? Why would I do this? What is the point of this? And somebody much wiser than me said, because here is the spectacle of 194, I think, countries attempting to try to negotiate together to deal with a fundamental global crisis. And this is an extraordinary institution. If you didn't have it, you would long to have it. And it's not for you to be the person that begins to try to, you know, kind of contribute your voice to deconstructing an institution that it has in fact taken many people to put together, and which, while it is fundamentally, obviously, an imperfect thing because it's a human institution, has been one of the most powerful levers to try to drive change in the climate space. And I've always remembered that about COPs. It's partly why I'm so deeply sympathetic to anyone who's attempting to run one like our poor ambassador. But the other thing to add to that is that it does also really speak to the fact that a multilateral institution can hold that together, but it is a tool for changing the real economy. It is not in and of itself the real economy. So you have to use that tool wisely. You have to make it to be a space where people come together, where difficult questions are asked, where implementation is driven. You have to take it out into your own spaces to make it work as something meaningful. And I'm laughing about it, but in one way, I'm quite serious. If a COP is comfortable, I think there are 2 kinds of COPs. There's one that people try to organize in a way that is totally contained, and they have an illusion that it's, sorry, Ambassador, that it's going to be possible to contain it. It's not my motto. That it's going to be possible to contain it and kind of pre-cook it. And there are other ones where people, and I think, you know, to give absolute credit to our amazing Brazilian friends and colleagues, there are others where people start from the very beginning and say, this is a open, unpredictable, creative, democratic space. And this is clearly what the ambassador and the Brazilian government are doing. And those COPs are the ones that have the greatest potential to be able to drive action, but also engage the spirit of democracy. So that's why I'm looking forward to being in Brazil.
Thank you.
Standing ovation. You get a standing ovation.
Thank you, Sheela.
I feel very strongly with the 2 speakers who talked about what was missing. And I think it's an obligation for all of us to stand up and say that. And very often we get so involved in the focus and the details of the subjects that we speak that we don't do that. We don't understand the deep crisis that we are all stuck in. It doesn't matter if it's in another country. We are so connected that it affects all of us. So I think your points are very well made, and I think we should we have many protocols in our own work when we have assemblies of communities where everything that's going wrong is discussed first. So that everybody acknowledges that these things aren't perfect, they aren't working, and at the back of our minds, we have to do something about it. Because you can't do it in that event, but you have to take it back to do something. And maybe that's a protocol we should all take in these large, very diverse groups that we work in, so that even if we were not sensitive about it in the beginning, some of us who may not know about those situations become aware of it, and by showing solidarity, they support that process. So thank you for bringing this up. We should have brought this up in the plenary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll make two comments. One is actually on the democratic backlash and so on. I've actually been relieved during this week that we have not talked about the climate backlash, because that's the only thing that corporate sustainability executives have been obsessing about for the past 6 months, and which has been really, really tough for us. So this has been an incredible week to just be able to have this important dialogue again, and to be able to learn from others, and to be able to feel that we have the movement is here, and now we just need to continue taking action. The other piece goes back to your question around how do we break the silos, what are the advice that you give? One advice that I would give is really try to work for different sectors and see their perspective. That's something that is extremely important in my career. I worked in international organizations, in business, in the NGO sector, and it's extremely important because then you truly understand how the world works. The reason I joined Zurich was actually to set up a community-based flood resilience program where we bring together academia, civil society, international organizations, and the business sector to work as equal partners, identifying what type of resilience-enhancing efforts can really help at a community level to enhance resilience to floods. We started with floods, and now we have added a number of other perils, so now we call the Climate Resilience Alliance, because actually the measures are almost the same, no matter what the hazard is, if it's heat, if it's drought, if it's floods, wildfires, and so on. So that would be my advice.
Thank you so much. And I think we're coming very close to the close of this session and to the close of London Climate Action Week. So let me give you one last opportunity to tell us something that's giving you hope out of this week, something that you're taking forward into your next set of meetings. You're all going into the most phenomenal kind of chain of the next several months that gives us an opportunity to really move forward the climate movement and beyond. But what is it that's giving you hope, Ambassador, coming out of this week? Well, I have to say many things because obviously I accepted this job unconsciously. But frankly, one thing that gives me a lot of hope is that I believe more and more that the incorporation of climate into the mainstream of the economy, into the mainstream of the programs of cities, of the programs of countries, is something that will bring not only good economic results, but will be better for people. Yeah. And I think that we have to fight for that anyway, even if some people don't believe in it, even if it's going to be difficult. I am more convinced than ever that that's the right thing that we have to do. So, and I believe that there are enough people who want to work in that direction, enough to really make the difference and advance significantly. Thank you so much. And Ruth?
Three very quick things. I know it's childish of me, but the presence of such a strong Brazilian delegation in the United Kingdom, the bilateral relationship we have, the leadership of our friends in the COP30 team has been an inspiration to us all week, and it is going to give us energy for the next months. So thank you very much for that. my two other quick things are that genuinely I've gone from room to room. I don't think it's just because I've been there, I hope it's not, but I have heard the entire climate community embrace the idea that the natural world is not a separate thing from human beings, and nor it is a separate thing from the climate crisis. It is just fundamentally a part of us, the environment in which we live, and absolutely central to every one of these discussions. So that is a breakthrough and a massive relief. And then the final thing is, in every room I've been in has been full of people with extraordinary ingenuity. And human beings have got such incredible resources to call on that if only we're given the opportunity, it's clear that there are more solutions out there than we can, kind of possibly capture or describe. So it's not so much now pushing things forward, it's opening a door for the opportunity of all that human ingenuity to solve the problem in front of us. So.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Sheela.
You stole my answer.
Oh. I stole it off you first.
No, so every time I come to events like this, I'm amazed at how many relationships and how many insights I get from people every time. And this year, this event has actually had me meet so many people that I've known who work with me but on long distance things, and also given me lots of ideas of the kind of engagements that we have to do for the constituencies that we care about, what linkages we need to have, what are we missing from not, what communication have we not done to further the value chain and the solutions that can be useful to the people that you represent. And of course, this particular day we celebrate, I'm going to write to my Brazilian favela friends that I've met you and you're going to work with us.
Good. Very good. Linda.
So many great things have already been said, to be honest. But I mean, for me, it really gives me hope is that we're starting to really discuss physical climate risk. Yes, we need to continue also looking at the transition, but this needs to be integrated. So resilience needs to be embedded in things, and resilience to be on top of the agenda has been fantastic. The other piece is really, I've been to a few climate action weeks for the past few years, and I feel that this one has truly have been cross-sector. So it's really been events where all the sectors coming together, and that's really key. It's not business running their thing and civil society running their thing and so on, and this has really been great. So big congrats to all the organizers. And then the energy. So the energy I have felt, the focus on let's just get things done, sharing what works, and let's just get on with it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. A big round of applause to the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You can take your seats. I'm just going to say a couple of closing words and send you on your way. I think the first is to thank the sponsors of the summit and those who've been absolutely at the heart of developing the program with us. Just a quick roll call of those again. So to FCDO, to BII, to the Wellcome Trust, to Quadrature Climate Foundation, to Zurich Insurance, to Howden Group, and to my colleagues at IIED. And on the program committee side, to the Atlantic Council, to the UN Climate Champions, to E3G, and IIGCC. If I'm forgetting anybody, huge apologies, it's late on a Friday. But it has been a real inspiration, actually. People have kept coming to me and saying, oh my goodness, this must have been so stressful. There must have been so much effort behind the scenes. Of course there has been. But actually, it's the benefit of having so many people involved and bringing that community together that has been wonderful about this event. And I really do hope we can take that forward into the future. But I think it's also important that I give a huge thanks to the team at IIED who has worked massively hard behind the scenes to make this possible, particularly to Matt, to Claire, to Anne, to James, to Amy, to everybody, and to our volunteers. And well done, everybody, for making it to the end. I would love to invite you, for those who can stay, to go upstairs to the river room, see the river, take a drink, relax at the end of London Climate Action Week, and really do wish everybody hugely safe travels. For those of you who are traveling far, we will see you again We will consider doing this again next year. And really look forward to bridging the divides, the barriers, and to finding the language that we need to take forward resilience finance. Take care, everybody.